see my stuff with my old eyes. I have to.
Oh, that's kind of cool. It's got.
It does have it. I don't really use this part very often, but I just use
Huh.
the straight edge because it helps. me
That's very
with
nifty.
Stuff. I don't know where we got them. There's a couple of them. I think I must have got them at one of the conferences I went to or something.
You're all set to go.
Okay, but when it comes up missing, I usually find out who that is.
Okay, so are you doing it or
What? No,
you're calling it? Okay. You looked at me like, no.
she was talking about people taking stuff, so I was looking at you.
Noted.
Came full circle. Jam. Oh, I think she's flipping me off.
Where's my agenda,
In
Cass?
a roundabout way.
I didn't get the agenda.
I don't think you need it, Paula. Do you want one?
So many
I
items
know,
on
that's
it.
what I take my notes on.
Well, yes.
Okay.
All right. We're gonna call the meeting to order. Greg isn't here, but we'll get started. You can catch up. Only item we have is budget. So I don't know how we want to go about. This is a learning, training, question asking session about the budget. So we want to start.
Should we call the order?
Call the meeting
You
to
did.
order.
You did?
I did. Yeah.
Reading your stuff, see, that's what you get for looking through those papers.
Mhm.
So, the stuff I gave you a month ago. And, I don't know if anybody looked through it and has specific questions. Or you want me to just kind of start like with going through the process and what each fund is, just kind of an overall. What works for you guys?
I think that's a good idea.
I think.
I do have a couple more questions when I went through, but I don't think it's that.
Okay, so it's
with
let's just kind
general-
of, okay,
So I think there's probably two levels of understanding. We're gonna have those folks on the finance committee and then the rest of us, right? So I think, I'm sorry, I'm just being honest, right? And so I think doing what you said is a good point, so.
okay.
Yeah.
So, like just a few, I think we might have mentioned this, like at one of you guys' first meetings that, we have to have this budget like before like March. We kind of have to have some things ready to go so that we're ready for a public hearing in May. And that's by law, the statute says we have to hold a public hearing to approve our budget by the third Monday in May. So,
So when you say March is.
like by March, we need to be rolling and having, and I mean,
Yeah.
we're doing well. We started working through things and, we want to start working, it says by March, but I start much earlier than that because March does not give you enough time. So, within our charter, there's a budget procedure process, talks about we have to have the budget hearing, adopt the budget, and then how we control the budget. That is basically, if the auditors are not going to, call us out of compliance if we are out of budget within each department, let's say within one department, just that office supplies number is over budget, but you get all the way to the bottom and there's extra money. Then you're okay, but I tend to amend it by line item. Because unless there's something strange hitting a line item, they should be pretty consistent for me. And if we start, well, this one's gonna be over, so let's hit office supplies to custodial. Well, then we don't have a true number of what's really going on. So as we get towards the end of the year, and I have some budget adjustments on for tonight, and then next month we'll have some more budget amendments for the budget we're in.
Mhm.
So as we start to see line items go over, we try to amend within our own departments to stay on task. Or we use contingency or something. So, well,
And that helps you for the next year, so that,
right,
yeah.
Yep.
Because in the profit world, we set a budget and we don't go back and amend things
right.
like we do in this realm. So that was a little confusing. I don't know if you, but I understood once I started reading why we do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the budget amendments are required by law, because by law, you can't spend money you don't have. Right? So if we budgeted $100,000 and we spent $102,000. Well, the law says, well, wait a minute, you're not, why'd you do this? And so we would get a letter from the state. But what we do is make those amendments, and sometimes we use contingency, so we have money in the bank that's from last year that we didn't spend. And we don't necessarily budget, to spend that, but sometimes we do, and then we have to amend to be able to cover that. So that is a little bit different, and it takes some getting used to, but and then we have to have a public hearing. And then we have to approve the budget after the public hearing. So we usually have 2 meetings in May, because the first meeting of the month, we do the public hearing, and the second meeting, we approve the budget. Because the way it reads is we can't approve it at the same meeting as at the public hearing. So it gives you time to make changes.
When does the budget need to be fully approved? You said in May.
By the 3rd Monday in May.
By the 3rd Monday, in May, which is what?
I don't know, but we typically, so we meet that first Monday and usually either the next Monday.
That's what I was.
Yep,
That's where I
we usually just follow it up. And it's usually literally a 5-minute meeting.
Okay.
Unless you want something else on it, it's just everybody, unless there's I really have never had it where it wasn't, but.
Well, that was more my question
Yep.
was just so we can get on people's calendar,
Yep,
the second. meeting.
so these sheets that you have, they have every department, every count number. And so we have funds. So in governmental accounting, we have a general fund, which is used that it does, our office, the police department, the DPW, the council, the mayor, the assessor. So it just covers all of the general governmental functions. And those are listed on that general fund, the one I just gave you. I don't know. If you have notes on your own one, you want to follow along, it's going to be the same. The first 101 is general fund. And then the very first chunk there on that first page is all revenue. And if you want me to go through what each source of revenue is, I can. If you have questions about what those sources of revenue, you can ask me. 101 is governing body, and then 171 is chief executive. So that's for the mayor and the council. So that covers the wages paid to those two, and sometimes people want training in there, we add some money to training. Otherwise, that's pretty much all that covers. Then we have elections.
So I have a question on that. So a couple of them stuck out, and you probably, the cell tower contract obviously came in less than we thought. I'm looking at it right. The
It had
activity was 48.
Well, we're only halfway through the year.
Oh, that's true. Okay.
So
So I gotta think of it that way.
yep, so when you look at, if you want to look at, so pretty much what we're looking at, we could almost double everything that's in here. Some things are, you only pay once a year, so no, you wouldn't double that, but the cell tower, I think it's gonna come in pretty close to exactly what we thought it was gonna, because that is half.
Okay.
So that activity that you have on the, I don't know if you're looking at the new one, but the new one, the activity is through today, anything that we had done up to today. If you're looking at the old one, it's through whatever date I ran that.
Okay.
So with it, it's 5-6 months somewhere. I mean, our fiscal year ends June 30th. So each of those 101, 101, 101, 171, 191. So those signify a department. And then within each department, wages is going to be 702. Social Security is going to be 715. And workers' comp is 725. So within each department, those numbers are going to carry through consistently. Office supplies should be the 727, 740, I think is custodial or something. So all of those you're going to see within each. So the clerk has a budget. Then we have for the board of review, the treasurer, city hall. And some of these get a little okay, where do we, we're going to pay for that fellow. Where do we hit that? Do we hit it to city hall? Do we hit it? What do you do with it? So sometimes we have to create something, or we have to say, well, this is where we're gonna hit that. The police department, they have their own. Fire department is the money we pay to LSW.
So that's what we pay for their wages? Is that how that, I mean, 'cause there's nothing in there for activity at this point.
That is, what we pay when we collect from the taxes.
Okay.
And so we only pay that once a year. But the townships and them, they pay it right as they collect it, but we always just, because our auditor said it had to come in our revenue, so we collect it. And then we pay them all at once, instead of writing them a check every couple of weeks throughout tax season,
Okay.
so. That, there will be a number like that for the ambulance as
Yeah.
well. Then we have a planning and zoning, we've tried to put all the marijuana stuff under there, so we know where to find it. Emergency services is just like a placeholder, or if that group ever meets and we needed to print something, if we had an emergency or whatever, we've never used that in the 23 years I've been doing this, so. DPW, again, if you go down there, you'll see wages, office supplies. But within there, you're gonna see some things that we don't have in other places, like mosquito supplies, CDL consortium, principal and interest, stuff like that. Then we have a sidewalks and parking lot maintenance. And what we've done now, so we're budgeting these numbers here, and like last year, I started a capital improvement fund, so that 20,000, you'll see some activity at some point when I move that to the capital outlay fund, so it'll sit there. So if we don't do a parking lot, it'll all be sitting under capital outlay for parking lots, where we've always been kind of going with a spreadsheet, trying to keep track of it. We're trying to use our accounting software that we upgraded to a couple years ago now to start tracking those things.
What's in the contingency?
Contingency is,
Finance Department,
so that 890, that is just extra money that we didn't need within our operations. So last year, what I call that is the balancing factor. So you have the revenue and then you have your expenses, and we have that much left. And so we budgeted it in contingency. So if, say we want to hit the fellow there, we could, or we could hit it somewhere else and then use contingency to cover it. So that, there's Parks and Rec in here, and then there's a library number. That's the number that the city pays for the library's utilities, repair and maintenance, and like if we do any improvements or anything like that, we hit it there. And all the painting and stuff that we did, we hit to the capital improvement fund, so you'll see that over there. We have insurance that we get a big bill from MML once a year, we split that up. And this is the portion that hits the general fund. Then the next capital outlay things are us moving money over to the capital fund. And then we've been trying to itemize out what we're doing, what we're moving it there for. We put footnotes in the budget now, and we're able to print those out, and so we can go through and say, Dave, did you take care of this from last year? Or Dan, did we buy those vests or whatever? And make sure that we did and we hit what we were supposed to. The next fund is the 202, which is Major Street. Then the next one behind that is 203. They're pretty similar. The local street and the Major Street are required funds by the state of Michigan. We have to, we get Act 51 funds, which is the money that comes from the gas tax. And those funds go directly here, and they get split up 70-30 among major, local, and that's the law. And there's only certain things you can hit here. You know, if somebody's working out at the sewer, we can't hit it here. If you're working in the park, you can't charge it to a major or local street. So we have street lights. There's different kinds of street lights. So we have lights that are our lights that we're paying for the electricity for. Those hit the general fund, but street lights would be like the lights that are hanging over, and we're paying for like the light itself. Or traffic services lights, like if Dave's putting up a stoplight or whatever. The you're not gonna see like the utility piece in here. You're only seeing the, yeah. And then,
So the hanging ones, that'd be consumers, correct? And we pay to them to,
well, consumers pays for the ones that are theirs. Well, we pay for like our little light poles.
Right,
And stuff
but I'm
like
talking
that.
about the hanging ones that we have over the intersections and stuff, that would be all consumers, correct?
They're not all consumers, right?
Yes.
They are all
Yes.
consumers, all the hanging ones are, okay.
All the
Okay.
hanging ones and all of the subdivision ones.
Yeah,
Do they bill us for it, or just?
No, we pay for the electricity.
That's what I'm saying, we pay for the electricity.
They maintain the fixed,
They maintain the fixture, we pay for the.
yeah. So these two, like, so if the guys are plowing, that hits here, you know, if they're painting the street lines, if there's, so those are the things that hit here and, if we do a road construction project, we hit that here, unless we're using the bond funds, then we would hit the bond proceeds account, which will show in a little bit, but. So that's what those two are. Then 209 is the cemetery. And then we just have some cemetery revenue and we have the expenses we pay out of the cemetery. It's not a money-making venture. Just so you know. 223 is our grants. I think that is where we were getting the recycling grant. I can't tell.
That's what it says on this one.
Okay,
That says
yep,
recycling.
so that one's the recycling one. And that one, we're just waiting to get the rest of the money back from Eagle and we'll be done with that one, so. 71 is the library. Same thing, you're gonna see, you know, certain accounts in there that everybody has, and then you're gonna see books, magazines, videotapes, accounts nobody else has. Then when you go to 287, this is for the rental rehab grant that we're doing at the Hafner building. We just try to keep track of all of those things separately, and we just do it in its own fund. Parking lot maintenance. What do we got here? 351. Oh, this is for bonds. So this is where we make our bond payment out of, so the millage that we collect comes in here. And we try to collect almost exactly what we're gonna pay out. So there's no extra money in that account, it just, the money comes in, it pays the bond payment, and then it goes back out. We'll have another bond payment coming up here in April for the principal for the 2017 bond. Or the 2014 one, see, need my 14, yeah. So we'll pay that 30,000 and then the interest or the bank fees and. Then we don't pay again until October. 401 is, that's where I'm budgeting in case we borrow money this year. If we don't borrow it, then it'll go away. If we do, then we don't borrow until after July 1st, then we'll just set this back up for next time. So. 508 is for, we were using that for the movies in the park when we collect money from the private donations and the concession stand revenues. And then trying to track here, like the supplies that we buy to set up the concession stand and the movie fees.
Did they skip one? Look at this game.
What I skip.
Fund 405. Capital project fund. I'm in the old one.
Yeah, it didn't show up in this one.
Yeah, it's
For
not
some
this
reason.
one.
yeah,
Ha,
that's fun.
I was working on it, it must have had it marked out. So 405 is the capital improvement fund. So that's where we're putting a lot of our savings, like we're trying to save money for the police car.
Okay.
We budgeted in this, you know, like in the 301, and then when I just move it to the 405. So that it's sitting there when it's time to buy a new police car, then we have the money to buy it.
Okay.
And we're doing the same thing with DPW equipment, and we're trying to add more items like the body cams, just covering specific things, lawnmower replacement, things like that. We're trying to start making sure that everybody knows that like, if we have a couple extra 100,000 sitting in the general fund, like when the auditor says, you guys have a really healthy fund balance. Well, a lot of this money is for these things that are depreciating assets that we need to replace.
Right, we're just
Sorry.
being prudent.
So,
Mix wrong.
so like we're setting aside
I heard.
$10,000 for improvements in the cemetery, and then over time, and there was some project, we have this money that you think.
Yep, that's the intent there. Yep, and last year we set aside that 6,000 to do the shed, and Dave has done most of that shed work now. So, yep, that's what that is. Good thing Gail had an old packet, because I skipped out of the 405. And the 590 is the sewer fund, which again is it's a fund that's required by law when we are collecting money for the utilities like that. It's supposed to take care of itself. So the state doesn't want to see you mingling what they call an enterprise fund in with all of your other stuff. They want to know that you're taking care of that infrastructure with that money that's raised for it. Which. And again, in there, you're gonna see the revenue, you know, for the sewer, we just have the connection charges, the monthly or quarterly fees. And then that's about it. You know, we get some penalties and a couple of little things here and there, refund checks or something, but, and then in there, you're gonna see the same account numbers for telephone, wages, all of those should roll, those are consistent numbers. And then we have things in there you wouldn't have anywhere else. Maintenance of the system. I think that's about it in there, I guess, the rest of them, sewer system improvements, some of those items you're not gonna see in other funds. So that's kind of an overall quick. Here's what we have. On this top sheet. This is where I get some of my numbers from. So like right now, some of these numbers are off last year's L 4029, which is how it's where everybody's millage rates come to us at, and that's how we legally are able to put it on people's taxes. So the operating city millage right now is at 14.4259, but because of Headley, that will roll back. And we never get these rollback numbers until May. So we're going off of last year's number, which sometimes I bump it down just a little or whatever, but it's pretty close. But when we actually make our budget, you know, resolution, we're required to tell people what the millage rate is that we're going to be charging them. The road bond, basically, I take the money that I know I'm going to make in road payments. So I know that I have $67,000 in debt. And I take that and divide that up by the taxable value and back into the millage rate. And the millage rate can never be more than 2.6 because that's what we passed in the language. But it usually isn't because our taxable value keeps going up. And then by the time you divide that out, usually our millage rate goes down a little bit, so. And the one bond will be paid off this next year. Our last payment will be April 1st, 2024. The library and the fire are supposed to be at 1 mil, but you can see they're 0.9466 because they have the Headley rollback, and they'll both roll back again this year. The only way to override that is a vote of the people to override Headley. Ambulance special, that's the new one that just passed. It's at 2. And then our taxable value is tentatively at 33,246.2. So we have real property and then we have personal property. And the general operating, so if you look at that, the numbers we just went through and you go to the general fund, like the first line item on that budget I just went through with you is the property tax, 101,401. That's where this number comes from. When I show you the sheet, this should be like pretty similar to that number that's on the budget. When we get all done, the budgeted number. So if you look at that sheet right there, the very bottom,
yeah.
this
Yep.
number right there. Yep, that should carry over to I don't know if I have it updated yet, hopefully it's close. Ah,
It's
Um,
identical.
awesome. That should carry over to what I'm budgeting here.
Oh, right there.
Yep. So just an example of how we got to some of those numbers.
Okay,
So, the DDA does capture some, that's what the DDAs do, they capture some of our taxes. And I kind of try to lay that out there. They don't capture the bond payment because they can't capture debt. And they don't capture the ambulance special assessment because that's a special assessment, so it's meant to pay a certain, and it doesn't get captured. So. Any questions so far?
So you kind of sit down with each person and do that. Do you feel like everybody knows how to do this? If I feel like this cross-referencing where people kind of have to be trained in other areas. If something happened to you, do you think that these people, everyone would know how to make this budget? That's what I'm concerned about. That's why I feel like.
are you planning on winning the lottery?
No.
Yeah.
When we had a, traumatic experience, and we had to realize that not everyone had the passwords, not everyone had the map.
Well, and when
That is what I'm trying to do with Kim and
when I
Cassie.
started, you
Okay.
talked about retirement. I mean,
Right, and that's what we're trying to do
Yeah.
with Kim and Cassie is train them
Jump
to
in.
be able to do these things.
There's just a
And
lot
I
of
mean,
it.
Cassie is aware of this spreadsheet.
Okay.
Could she do everything in here? I mean, but we are working through these things. Could Dan or Dave do this spreadsheet? No. I mean, they don't
come
know,
on, Dave.
but my girls in the office, we're getting there. Those are things that we do work on and, that's why I think it's really important that, I try to train each of them separately to do different things that I do.
Right.
So that they both know how to do it.
But you just brought up that it can't be more than 2.6. I would have never known that. Do you know what I'm saying? Hopefully somebody else is gonna know that
Right.
because.
Well, and that's why I try to put
I mean, it
this,
says max right there, but would we have known that that was like
it should be on the L 4029, which will come to this council to pass at some point. So the assessor prepares a form called the L 4029 and it has all your millage rates on there. And then I try to make sure that every year when they prepare that they put the expiration date on there. Because when I first got here, people go, oh, what's the ambulance millage form? Like, I don't know. I'm digging through everything, trying to figure it out. So now I try to put it on these things or in these budget highlights. You'll see where I try to keep those things up. So I think these are a track for people to be able to follow from year to year what I did.
nice.
So, but the 4029 is what feeds all of this. So, everybody should make sure that this stuff is done correctly, right? You know what I
Well,
mean?
yeah,
But I'm just saying that this is not something that I walked in here knowing how to do. You know what I mean? I taught myself a lot of it and I am doing, I am really trying to make sure that those two can both do separate sections of my job. And there is some overlap. And I'm trying not to learn some of the things that they're doing with the website. What do you mean you can't do that? I don't run that texter thing then where they text all you guys. I don't do that. I'm like, I'll just send them an email. They don't answer. I'm sorry.
And then 3 days later, you text me, did you get that email? Sorry.
So, but yeah, so this is a spreadsheet that I generated to be able to fill in items on the budget. So, yeah, some of these things you will be able to find roadmaps to that, that we only collect the 2.6, and that's because that was the voted millage. And I only know that because I was here when we voted that millage in, you know what I mean? And so I've tried to document so that people can follow. On the budget highlights, which is this thing, this is the other piece that I kind of like, so this is all, it's like a copy of 22, 23, and I'm trying to make it into 23, 24 now. So I'm just kind of giving you my like work in progress, so you understand what I'm going through. You know, that we talked about that, you know, the MERS. All the employees pay 3% of their wages. When we first started, the city paid 7%. Now it's 14.57%. But I mean, for 20 years, that's what it's gone up to. And that is right on our MERS bill and stuff like that. So, but that's how I calculate what it's gonna cost us for somebody's retirement this year to put into the budget. Employee benefits, you know, are gonna remain consistent. And then I did have some information about what's gonna happen with our health insurance, and then we have to make some decisions there. Whether we want to keep it, we want to lower it, we want to, you know, I mean, there's options, but this is what we have been doing. And so that's, I'm just kind of letting you know that's what I did. Then the wages, we talked about, I've talked to both of these guys, and $1 an hour is what everybody's kicking around. So if you guys say no, we don't do it. If you guys say yes, we can do it. Computer equipment, we trying to like every year replace one or two so that we ever get in a position where they're all need to be replaced. Our server is in need of some work. We're trying to get a quote on that right now. Building improvements, I talked through some of these things with Dave. We went through the list of what was on this sheet last year. We took off what was done. And then I transfer what was done to the back page. So you guys can see what we did last year, and that's still a work in progress. So, and these are the things that still need to be done or we've added to. And then we got the park improvements. Kind of go through what we did last year, what we haven't done yet, or what we want to do next year. Capital outlay, and you know, everybody can talk about these things in their like committee meetings or whatever. And if there's something that we put in here that's on our wish list that somebody's concerned with, that's a good time to bring it up. We got some DPW equipment we didn't buy last year. We probably might not get to it by the end of this year, so we might roll some of it over and ask for it next year. Kind of talk to Dave about what sidewalks we might do, like what the guys are gonna do. New generators, whether we still want to get a portable pump or not. Cemetery lawnmower is looking bad. Hi, how you doing?
How you doing?
Good. What roads we're gonna do, and what treatments they're gonna have, whether we're gonna use, bond out to pay for some street work with our Act 51 funds. What parking lots we want to do. Last year we budgeted to do Williams and the city hall lot. We haven't got them done. Dave's not sure it's gonna happen by June 30th. We'll keep it in there. And that's why we're moving those funds to the capital outlay. We decided we want to start putting away, you know, $500 a year for new globes for the light pole downtown. That way, those funds can be transferred when it's time to pay for them. So that way people don't forget, we gotta replace those globes once in a while. We're budgeting like for the future for a new police vehicle, body cameras and bulletproof vests. Talked through that with Dan, and you know, those are monies we're gonna start transferring to save over to the capital outlay program. The next section is how we get our revenue. These are things I started tracking. So this might answer some of your questions, Gail, that, you know, on the revenue, this is the 10th year we've been collecting for the road mill, you know. It doesn't say when it ends, but that would be on the 4029. I can add more detail there. The 12th year of collecting the 1 mil that's just an automatic 1 mil for the library. We don't have to put it in. We're allowed by statute to collect that. And we used to pay those funds right out of the general fund, and we don't have to anymore since we passed that millage. So that freed up money for us to be able to use for street work or what other things we could do with them. 2014, we renewed the 1 mil for the emergency services for 10 years. So, and I put on there for you that it'll expire in 2025. And then November, and so see, these are things, if you could look at last year's, you can always, you know, hopefully follow that trail a little bit. November of 2022, we just passed that ambulance assessment for 2 mills, and that will expire November of 2032 now. Then I put on there the marijuana, what our local license is, what we got this from the state, and then, you know, we don't really know what we're gonna collect this year, but we're anticipating it's gonna be up from that number. The next is our debt, the interest and bond payments, and the last item is the 425 agreement that we have with Scioto Township. It's 2 mills on whatever their taxable value is. And last year it was 2.6. I haven't got the updated number yet, so. That's how I build the budget, is from those categories. Does that make sense?
I'd like to circle back just real quick. Healthcare, obviously, as you look, everybody knows it's plenty. I mean, the retirement, I think there's, you know, that's what's suggested, and that's what we do, and we follow that thing. But do we have, do you have any ideas of the healthcare issue as far as their prices? Because it keeps growing and growing.
Well, I want to say it's probably been 10 or 12 years now, but it was growing at, like, it was getting up there to 15-20% a year that our premiums would increase. So we increased our deductible. We went from pretty much not having any deductible to like a $2,500, $3,000 deductible. And then the city just paid that deductible, and it lowered our premiums where we're might now maybe just be getting near where we were when we did that.
How long ago was that, do you think?
I would have to check, but it's 10-15 years. I mean, it was like, I mean, everybody thought it was a little bit crazy, but it really did reduce our premiums. And then if people didn't use the deductible, we didn't spend it. So it really did work out, but I mean, there's other plans. We can go to a lower rate plan. We can charge people for the, you know, but one of the things that we prided ourselves in is that, you know, it is a good benefit of working here is that you don't have to pay for your health insurance, and way to attract and keep people is your benefits. So,
But didn't we have a problem, if I remember correctly? Because we didn't have, there wasn't too many people that were insured here, and that was part of the problem. It wasn't like a large group plan or something where you get the discounts. You only had what, how many, we got 2 or 3 people,
yeah, we have 3
so
families.
that was a problem.
Do you think it's worth just investigating a little bit, I guess?
So we could, but if you look in the council packet tonight, I gave you a list that shows all of the options for healthcare. And then they are insurance agents, I guess that's what they are, that they shop that for us. And they do it on a bigger level through MML, so they do get a better pricing unit. So we have shopped it and we have done that, but what would happen is if we've done this, we like went from Blue Cross Blue Shield to PHP and then back. And then the first year it goes down and the next year it's right back up astronomically. And so whenever we switch, that's what happens. I mean, and it is really inconvenient for people to do that. We've tried that a couple of times but I mean, I didn't think it was horrible this year, but it did go up. But we do have
It's across the board
options.
for all businesses. I feel like it just keeps going up and up and up. It's not just like.
I mean, the only option, we could look at what options are on, I mean, there are a lot of options, and we would just have to sit down and look through those options and figure out what people want to do. But we do pay that deductible, and what we do is we put it into a flexible spending account. And if you spend it, great. If you don't, we get to keep it. I mean, that way the city didn't spend that money up front, and it just stays in the fund.
My company gives us $500 for that flexible spending account at the beginning of every year to keep the whatever, the monthly cost down. And so they figured it's better giving every employee $500 than thing that higher rates.
Yeah, I don't want people to have to pay. I just wanted to know if there was anything we felt like we'd investigated it, because I think it's gonna keep happening. I mean, I don't think this is gonna go away.
So I just been happy. Paul said.
it has, and we have, I don't think it's been that long since we switched to this one that we're in right now, but, you know, I'll reach out, you know, if it goes up way too much, and we'll look at other plans, other options, higher deductibles, other programs.
I just got hit with a over $1,000 deductible for mine. I got good insurance, so. Things are just going up.
Then we can investigate it, Gail, for sure.
Well, I feel you've investigated. I was just curious, you know, because going back and forth between different plans and deductibles and stuff, that's really the only way that I think people have. Yeah. So,
And we've done.
No, I
As
know.
being
right.
employee, it's nothing right, it's pay the butt.
And we just don't have the participation to offer like a bunch of different plans, you know? So like whatever we offer, take it or leave it.
We want it to be a good plan.
And we have, I feel like we have. I mean, I don't think we've had many complaints at all. So. So that was kind of my overview. Okay, good.
Yeah.
So then in the, like every month in your packet, you get this treasurer's report. And that shows you how much revenue we have in each of those accounts. So like, you know, I talked about the major and local street funds, you know, between those, there's a little over $400,000, which seems like a lot until you do one street project, and then it's gone. So those are, I mean, and the local street fund is lower because we have spent some money out of that local street fund recently doing the category B projects, and we paid our match out of there. So, the major street fund, there's money there to do a project. So, and I've seen it where, I mean, these funds are actually in decent shape right now. I've seen it where we didn't know we were gonna get through the fiscal year without money there. We don't really get that much money from the Act 51 funds, so I think it's a little over $100,000 a year, which doesn't even. It doesn't do a street project, so. So these funds, they tell you what we have.
About ballpark, you figure we spend on street projects in fall, half nine,
No,
250,000.
some years we don't spend anything, and
Okay.
then when, if we do a project. I mean, if we're just gonna do like chip seals and some
Yep.
things like that, we could spend a couple $100,000.
Okay.
We're gonna do a major reconstruct, it could be more than $500,000. So, and that's why we're talking about doing this bonding, because then we can bond, we can get $1 million and actually do some projects. And then bond again in a few years and not have bonded for 2 million in the first place. We have that other millions, you know, we can get when we're ready for it, but we can't do $2 million of the street work in 1 year anyways.
Right.
So, and if we did, we don't want all of those to come back to us on the same year in the future. So we want them,
Nobody-
we want the projects to be spread out, right?
Nobody's gonna want all the construction all at once.
No, we'd have our entire town tore up if you wanted to fix everything, and then they would all be bad again at the same time. You don't want that either. So. When I get our revenue sharing, I go to the state website, pull up this Act 51 revenue sharing. It's available to the public. Tells us how much money that we're gonna get from the state. They try to give you a forecast and all that good stuff. I got our debt service, we have the 2 road millages and the Little Wonder. That's our only debt right now. Then for the employees, like I said, I kind of talked to those guys. I have spreadsheets. I see what the retirement's gonna cost. Those kind of things I dump into the spreadsheet, and then I put those in the budget. Unemployment or MESC, those numbers, what we're gonna pay out of people's lead banks, all that kind of stuff. And then we have our muni meetings that, we have some like subscriptions like that, those numbers. And we're kind of at their mercy, or we don't use that program anymore, that kind of thing, so. What else?
So,
Go ahead,
well, I want to go over what the next couple months
okay,
is gonna be. This group needs to do for the budget, right? So we're kind of prepared.
so tonight on the council's agenda, I have the health insurance. If we aren't ready to make a decision tonight, I think that finance should look at that. And make a recommendation to council for next time. Things like that are the things that we have to, if these things I told you tonight, the MERS or the health insurance or the wages, if something you want changed. Or you don't agree with some of these things I just brought up, then you need to tell us so that we can make changes to those budget line items and put in there what you want. For instance, if you don't think we should, get a $10,000 raise, you should only get a $40,000 raise or something.
Okay.
Then,
So,
you would tell us that.
yeah, right.
So in essence, you asked for $1 raise, that's what was on the thing. And
Correct.
so then the finance committee would kind of like make a decision, make a recommendation and say to you or whatever, and then the
To
council would
council.
approve, and then you
Right.
would put that into your budget.
We can put whatever we want in the budget, but if you guys don't pass it or agree with it, then we don't have a budget. So
Yeah.
that's where we work through those things. But if there's, as we go through these things, because most of you are, just being introduced to this stuff. If you have questions, I need to know it. If you want to know, anything about the benefits or things that I can control. There's certain things that there's nothing I can do about, like the DPW's gas budget or
Right.
if you want the cop cars parked, then we can't get gas, But otherwise, there's just certain things in our budget, Social Security, Medicare, the retirement, those things, unless you're gonna change those programs, those numbers are stayed, they're just in there. Most of our revenue, there's not a lot of control that you have over that. You can say, well, you got this off by $1,000 and I can change it, but most of those numbers are set. They're just that's the way they're gonna come in. Been doing this long enough that pretty much know this budget like the back of my hand, so. It's we're gonna do the Spark grant or the River grant, those kind of things we wanna know, because then we can make sure we budget appropriately. We need to talk to whether we're gonna, move forward with the bonding project, which I think is, I think we've all pretty much agreed we're moving in that direction. So that's what the next month looks like is, so tonight at council, we'll get some, feedback on how you guys feel, if you want us to change something, or you call us individually and then we start making some changes, and then we deal with it at our committee meetings next month. And hopefully get it back to us so we can get it in shape, because that'll be March's meeting. So by April's meeting, we want to have this pretty much settled. And then at our May council meeting, be able to have our public hearing, and then by the third week, we pass the budget.
I feel like I know a lot more. I'm glad you took the time.
Thank you.
Yeah,
You're
we
welcome.
appreciate it.
Well, we got a couple minutes. You want to talk about the $1 million sewer project? No.
I did have one question on the auditing thing. So they have it down, governmental activities, business-like activities, total government. So how do you decide?
Let me see what,
Yeah.
just show me
I
what
want
you're talking about.
Yeah.
So, the governmental activities,
Yeah,
those are, everything except the sewer fund. So the sewer fund is called, like an enterprise fund, and so
Okay.
that is the business type
That's
activity.
the business type.
Because that one is required to be ran that way.
Okay, I would have never,
Yep.
in my mind, I was like, how do we decipher
Yep.
between
Yep,
what's
so,
business
and
what's-
they take our, like, our BSNA, you know, my general ledger numbers, and
Okay,
they just crunch them all together,
Okay.
except for that one, they leave them out.
okay. Makes sense. Thanks.
All right, so what's this $1 million sewer?
So, the ponds
You
have,
piqued my interest.
the ponds have sludge
Yeah,
in
okay.
them. And so the sludge builds up over time. And as you know, we've had those discharge issues, right? But now we have those, you know, we had the violation notice and everybody, they changed the like the range that numbers are supposed to fall in from the GQ or E. Hey, Justin, and so we kind of got that all under control. We put a lot of work into making sure that our numbers are right, but our numbers, those folic acid, phosphor, what number? Okay, anyway, the numbers that, the numbers that the Eagle people didn't like, those could be worse
Ferric.
because of the sludge, right? Ferric, the ferric number. So, as time goes by, then they keep making you measure the sludge. And once the sludge gets to a certain amount, they make you remove it. And when you remove it, it's not like Dave can go out there with a shovel and just get that stuff out of there. It's like, they have to test it. There has to be, then, once the testing comes back, they tell you where you can put the sludge, like, and, you know, you have to have a certain kind of
Mercy
company to handle the sludge. So those are things that,
If
you know,
numbers are in a certain range, it can be land applied. If it's not, then it's gotta go to the environmental disposal.
because sometimes,
Pricey.
yeah,
which it is.
sometimes farmers will take.
I was gonna say land
That's what I'm
applied,
saying,
that's
we're
some
outside
good-
town, they're doing it, they were doing it.
Well, that's what happened last time. We were able to land apply it.
Correct.
And, but the prices then were a quarter of this.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we have 3 ponds. We have Lagoon 1, Lagoon 2, and Lagoon 3. Number 3 is the one we want to focus on,
Correct.
because that is the one we discharge out of. So the first one is where everything comes in, and then it gets cleaned, and then it goes to the other pond, and then it finally goes to the last pond, and then it gets sent off. So you want that last pond to be the cleanest. So we would focus on cleaning that pond first. And the number to clean that, if we did it next year, is 274,000.
But too much to wait.
If we wait 5 years, it's 373,000.
So do they? I guess my question is, isn't there something they dump in there? They'll dissipate that stuff to. Enough to where you can discharge it.
So here's the problem. When you start putting chemicals in there, with the chemicals you already have, then now you have more problems with the releasing. And yes, we have been putting I actually started tracking it separately in the budget because one year it cost us $40,000 for those said chemicals. And those, we have not seen a huge difference.
Let me ask you, how are you getting the recommendation to what chemicals are used in the pond, in that pond to do that with? Is it through a certain company or
Which, the one, yeah,
where you having the
the
problem
city council.
with discharging?
You guys
Right.
approved those chemicals through Clearbrook. It was something else when they first.
Yeah, and I
started.
can't remember what it was.
But anyways,
I
new
thought you were going to
systems.
pool place.
It was called new systems and then they sold to Clearbrook or something. Those chemicals were put in there to. I don't know if it reduces the sludge, but it lowers the growth of the sludge. Does that make sense?
And we use chemicals in our, like our. You know, grease pits. Or not us, but RHS, what's our housing. To help with that, because they discharge theirs right in the sewer and right in East Lansing. And they've got certain stuff that will eat that stuff out, so you don't have to, you know what I mean, don't worry about pumping it out.
We apply, they're called biobugs.
Okay,
They will eat the grease, but when it goes out to that system, when you add the chemicals to drop the solids out, that solid does not go away. That's what has to be removed.
So like every time once in a while you gotta have your septic tank.
I don't know. We got sewer here, so I wouldn't know about septic. Right, right.
Get a pump.
So
They,
that's what.
they
those
have the
filters are
same
for.
system
Yeah.
at the plant.
And they sell snake oil to put down your toilet, so your septic tank will clog and all that good stuff. Some of it works, some of it don't. I'm sure you've all tried it. I don't know. But we have recommended, Dave and I have recommended, and we called to stop
Yeah,
those chemicals.
that's.
Because,
And they're just not working.
well, we feel like if we're gonna clean it up, take it out,
I agree.
because that's not gonna
But you
keep
wanna
us
get
from
along.
cleaning this.
Right.
Right?
It's just gonna be prolonging it
Correct.
to an
Yeah.
extent.
So-
I mean, I'm on the other side of that, so I would like to clean.
So pond, that's the number 3 pond. If we wanna do the number 1 pond, that's 772,000.
It's bigger though. It's more acreage.
Yeah. And it's more.
Well, and it's the first one, so it has the
Grow
most sludge.
Correct. But it's also 18.3 acres where the other ones are 6.5.
So. That was just an introduction to the sewer saga.
Well, so I think that's gonna be, I mean, that can almost be incorporated with. Something we're gonna be talking about a little bit later on in our council meeting too, that I had a question about, so we'll wait till that happens.
Alrighty.
Just a little concern there, I guess.
Okay. Can I get a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I make a motion.
I
Second.